Welcome to This Explainer. If you spend any significant amount of time trying to absorb really dense, complex information, you've probably hit that wall, right? That moment where fatigue just sets in and your brain flat out refuses to cooperate. We have absolutely all been there, staring at a heady textbook or a massive 50-page research paper, feeling totally mentally exhausted before we've even made a dent in the thing. Well, today, we're diving into a fascinating approach that tackles this exact kind of fatigue head on. It's an incredibly effective, yet kind of counterintuitive technique, known as the first answer strategy. Instead of fighting through the usual grind of linear reading, this method completely reorganizes your workflow to drastically improve your focus and retention. By the time we wrap up this analysis, you might just find yourself fundamentally rethinking how you tackle your very next heavy reading assignment.
So take a second to reflect on your own habits. When you sit down with a new, super intimidating chapter of a book, how do you usually study it? For the vast majority of us, the process is just relentlessly linear. You crack open the book, start at the top of page 1, and just plow right through. Maybe you've got a highlighter in hand, meticulously marking what seems important, until, boom, you realize you've highlighted so much that the entire page is just this glowing neon yellow blur. And let's be honest about the result of that grueling process. How many times have you reached the end of a dense 30-page section, closed the book, and realized your brain is completely empty? The words just washed right over you. Sure, you were technically reading, but your mind wasn't actually capturing or processing any of the underlying concepts. It is a massive source of frustration, and it perfectly sets up the specific problem our source material is trying to solve here.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at the core mechanics. The first answer strategy is, simply put, the practice of reading exam questions and their corresponding answers before you ever dig into the actual chapter content. Now take a moment to really let the paradox of that sink in. You are deliberately seeking out the answers before you've even read the material you're supposed to be learning. In a conventional academic setting, looking at the answers first almost feels like cheating, doesn't it? It feels completely backwards, literally like reading the final page of a complex mystery novel before you've even met the characters in chapter 1. But when it comes to efficient information processing, you aren't spoiling the ending. You're actually doing something brilliant. You're giving your brain the exact, precise coordinates of the critical information it needs to hunt down. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the fascinating contrast in methodologies. Think about the standard approach, what we can call the traditional trap. In the traditional trap, you dive straight into the chapter content. You wander through thick paragraphs and endless pages completely blindly, just crossing your fingers and hoping your brain organically picks up what matters. And then, eventually, you try to test your knowledge. It's essentially hoping for accidental learning. Well, the first answer strategy completely flips this timeline. By looking at the exam questions and answers first, and only then reading the chapter content, you shift from being a passive wanderer to a targeted sniper. You aren't wandering blindly anymore because you've armed your brain with a highly specific filter. You know exactly what the essential data looks like before you even begin the search. The strict execution of this sequence is where the real psychology of learning comes into play. The process is broken down into two very rigid steps. Step 1, read the exam questions and answers. Step 2, read the chapter content. I know, it sounds almost too simple, but the unwavering order is what actually rewires your reading experience. You absolutely must look at the answers before you ever glance at the actual chapter text. Think of it kind of like building a jigsaw puzzle. If you just dump all the pieces on a table and randomly try to connect the middle, it's chaotic, right? It's frustrating. But if you build the border first, if you establish that framework, every subsequent piece has a logical place to go. By memorizing the end goals first, you're building a cognitive map. So when you finally move to step 2 and read the chapter, your brain already has a pre-existing schema to attach that brand new information to. So the crucial point is that the ultimate payoff of this entirely backward process is a drastic improvement in retention. And let's face it, retention really is the holy grail of studying. It absolutely doesn't matter how fast you can speed read a chapter or how aesthetically pleasing your color-coded notes are if the information just evaporates from your memory by the next morning. Priming your brain with the answers first actually activates your mind's natural pattern recognition software. Instead of passively absorbing words, you're actively problem-solving. As you read, your brain is constantly scanning, thinking, there's the context for that answer I read 10 minutes ago. This active engagement weaves the raw facts into a much deeper web of understanding. It cements the knowledge deep in your long-term memory because you've attached meaning and relevance to it the exact moment you encountered it. And this brilliantly illustrates the core thesis of our source material, bringing us right back to this definitive critical takeaway. Reading exam questions and answers before the chapter content improves retention. It's a bold claim, for sure, but the cognitive mechanics back it up perfectly. Knowing your final destination completely transforms the actual journey of reading. It elevates you from a passive consumer of a textbook into an active, highly engaged investigator. When you read with the answers already in mind, you're going to start experiencing these constant, tiny light bulb moments. You'll be mid-paragraph and suddenly recognize the exact solution to a problem you know is coming up. That flash of recognition, that aha moment, is the exact chemical process of memory formation happening right there in real time. You aren't just scanning text anymore. You are actively connecting the dots. So, what does this all mean for you? Think about the hardest, most tedious textbook or report sitting on your desk right now. How are you going to approach your very next reading assignment? Are you going to fall right back into the traditional trap, opening to page 1 and just hoping that dragging your eyes from top to bottom will magically result in deep comprehension? Or are you going to test this highly targeted, counterintuitive strategy? The next time you sit down to tackle complex material, try finding the end-of-chapter questions or the study guide answers and read them first. Give your brain the map before you banish it into the wilderness of the text. Because once you experience how knowing the answer beforehand dramatically changes how you process the very first sentence, you have to ask yourself, why on earth would you ever waste your time studying the old way again?